Our first contact was a warning shot. Our second was a message. Our third was war. Veth Intelligence Operative Kos had infiltrated 34 facilities in his career. He had extracted data from military installations, diplomatic stations, research vessels, and once, memorably, a floating city on a gas giant during a Category 6 atmospheric event. He was, by any assessment, very good at his work. The Soulfleet Intelligence Archive was different. Not in terms of security. The security was competent, but not exceptional. Different in terms of what was inside. He had entered expecting military intelligence, capability assessments, fleet deployments, weapon specifications, contingency plans. The kind of data that justified the mission, that fit neatly into the Veth operational framework for assessing and countering threats. He had not expected a library. The archive was, in the most literal sense, a library of humanity. Not just military data, everything. Historical records, scientific documentation, cultural analysis. Every observation humanity had made of the galaxy around them, cross-referenced with their own internal history, annotated in multiple languages, maintained with the obsessive completeness of people who believed that information was inherently valuable regardless of its immediate application. He had been looking for deployment schedules. He found, in the first 2 hours, a complete annotated history of every Veth military action in the Sol system, prepared from publicly available observational data, with accuracy ratings for each assessment. The accuracy ratings were, he checked 3 of them against his own classified files, correct. Then he found the incident reports, 60 years of them. Every direct and indirect contact between humanity and the Veth, documented from the human side. The warning shot at the lunar base, the broadcast in 17 languages, the subsequent monitoring, the intelligence analysis, the pattern recognition that had told Soulfleet Command, years before it went public, exactly what was happening outside their solar system. He read them in order. It took him longer than he'd planned. He was on his 3rd day when he found the sub-archive that changed the character of the mission entirely. The heading was simple: Aster's pre-contact records. Sol survey. Asterisk. The pre-contact records were the files from before the officially acknowledged timeline, before the quarantine vote, before the exclusion perimeter, before any of it was named or formal. There were 93 files in the sub-archive. They ranged from astronomical observations to monitoring logs to one document that was labeled, in the plain style of a professional report, Unidentified Signal Detection, Night Survey Log, Radio Telescope Facility, Northern Array. Kos opened it. It was a personal log, not a formatted report. A log, in the voice of the individual who had been working the night shift when the detection happened. Her name was Dr. Amara Osemensa. She had been 26 years old. She had been working alone. Asterisk Night Survey, Week 4, 0237 hours. Asterisk. Asterisk picked up anomalous signal in the 2.3 gigahertz band. Pattern is non-natural. Repeating, structured, showing modulation that suggests intentional transmission. Duration of initial detection: approximately 4 minutes before the signal fell out of antenna range. Asterisk. Asterisk signal analysis. The modulation pattern is consistent with a distress call, not a human distress call. The encoding is unlike any standard protocol I recognize, but the structural pattern is consistent with distress signal conventions. Repeating signature, short burst structure, no apparent content beyond identification and location data. Asterisk. Asterisk, this is from somewhere else. I need to run the analysis again. Asterisk. He read the log to the end. She had spent the rest of the night shift running every analysis she had access to. She had confirmed the signal's non-human origin. She had identified the source direction, which placed it within a sector of space that, he cross-referenced, corresponded to a Veth patrol route from 63 years ago. She had tried to reply. A human radio response, in every band she could reach. Not a coded message, just a carrier tone and her observatory's location data. Standard practice for a researcher who had just detected something that might be intelligent life and was trying to signal that she had received and was present. She had waited for 2 hours. There was no response. She had submitted a report to her facility director the next morning. The report had been filed, reviewed by an administrative committee, classified as an anomalous detection requiring further verification, assigned to a queue. It had been in the queue for 63 years. She had kept a personal copy, which was what Kos was reading now. The last entry in the log read, * no follow-up response. Filing the report and moving on. But I want to note this somewhere. Whatever that signal was, whoever sent it, I try to answer. I hope they got somewhere safe. * the full timeline. Ko spent his 4th day in the archive building a complete timeline. He had come from military intelligence. He was building something else entirely. The first item on the timeline was Dr. Oseminso's log. 63 years ago, humanity reaching out, unprompted, to a signal that turned out to be Veth, from a ship that had been in distress in a sector they hadn't been supposed to be in. The Veth ship, he found this in his own classified files, cross-referenced, had survived, had not received the human transmission, or if they had not responded, had not reported the detection of Veth Command, because being in that sector was itself a violation of their patrol orders. 60 years ago, the warning shot at the lunar base. His people had arrived, found humanity more advanced than the quarantine projections anticipated, and fired a warning shot. Standard protocol. Back off the perimeter. Humanity had returned fire in 12 seconds. Had broadcast in 17 languages, asking who was shooting at them. Had spent the subsequent months monitoring, documenting, analyzing. 50 years ago, the first intelligence exchange files. Humanity building a picture of what was happening around them, piece by piece, from observational data and signal analysis. The patience of researchers who knew something was there and had decided to understand it before acting on it. 40 years ago, Sol Fleet's classified assessment, distributed internally, that the quarantine was known and had been for some time. 9 years ago, the Veth ultimatum. 3 years ago, humanity's accession. And underlying all of it, at the beginning, a 26-year-old researcher on a night shift who had picked up a Veth distress signal and tried to answer it. He sat with this for a while. He had been sent to gather intelligence on a threat. He had instead documented 63 years of contact history from the perspective of the people his species had spent 60 years treating as a threat to be managed. He found the military files he'd been sent for on day 5. Fleet deployments, defense infrastructure, weapon specifications, everything Veth Command had asked for. He filed it. Complete, accurate, professionally done. Then he started writing the second document. Kos reads the file. He read the full archive in order. All 93 pre-contact files. All 60 years of incident reports. The classified Sol Fleet assessments. The diplomatic communications he'd accessed through the data connections he'd established in the first day. He read Yarasolis's personal log entries. He read the after-action report from the Endurance. He read Yemi Adeyemi's lecture transcript and the letter she'd sent to the Keth xenobiologist in response to his inquiry. He read Counselor Obi's diplomatic communications, including the private notes she'd made that were, technically, on a secure channel he shouldn't have been able to access, but had, because he was very good at his work. He read the Veth First Contact report, his people's version of the same history. The warning shot classified as standard protocol. The human return fire classified as aggressive. The subsequent monitoring classified as threatening. 60 years of documentation that described the same events from the opposite direction and arrived at completely different conclusions about what the events meant. He read them side by side. The Veth archive and the human archive. The same 60 years. It was, he would later write in his report, a uniquely clarifying exercise. He did not use the word clarifying to mean comfortable. He used it to mean it showed him where the shape was. On the 6th day, he found Dr. Osaminsa's file again. He read it a second time. I hope they got somewhere safe. They had. Eventually, after 60 years and a warning shot and an ultimatum and an accession negotiation, she had been 26 years old, alone on a night shift, and she had tried to answer. Not for strategic reasons. Not because it was protocol. Because something had sent a distress signal, and she was a researcher who had picked it up, and it was the human thing to do. He closed the file. He sat in the dark of the archive. He thought, my people fired first. We fired first, and then we spent 60 years treating the response as evidence of aggression. He thought, she tried to answer our distress call. We didn't know that. We never knew that. He thought, I am a Veth intelligence operative who has spent 6 days reading 63 years of history, and I have concluded that my mission parameters were based on a mischaracterization of who we are dealing with. He started writing the recommendation. The mission report was filed in 2 parts. Part 1, military intelligence. Complete, accurate, organized. Every piece of data Veth Command had requested. Fleet deployments, weapons specifications, defense infrastructure. Exactly what he'd been sent for. Part 2 was the document that cost him 2 days to write and 3 rewrites to get right. It was titled Contextual Analysis, Soul Fleet Archive, Pre-Contact and Contact Period Records. It opened. Asterisk. This report is submitted alongside and subsequent to the primary intelligence package. The intelligence in the primary package is accurate and complete. This contextual analysis is submitted because I believe the intelligence, without context, will be misread. I am prepared to accept any professional consequences of submitting unsolicited analysis. Asterisk. Asterisk. The following is a summary of 63 years of contact history as documented in Soul Fleet's archive. I have cross-referenced where possible with our own classified records. The comparison is significant. Asterisk. He laid out the timeline. He summarized every file. He included Dr. Osaminsa's log in full, cited as Exhibit A. At the end, he wrote the recommendation. Asterisk. We fired the first warning shot. We have treated the subsequent 60 years as evidence of human aggression. The archive presented a different picture. A species that returned fire after being shot at, then immediately broadcast 17 languages, asking who was shooting at them. A species that spent 60 years patiently building a picture of what was happening outside their system, waited until they understood it completely, and then announced it without anger. A species that, when given 72 hours to evacuate, spent the time finishing construction projects they had been working on for months. Asterisk. Asterisk. More significantly, a species that, 63 years ago, picked up a Veth distress signal and tried to answer it. We did not receive the transmission. We were not aware it was sent. This is documented in their archive and corroborated by the signal logs I have attached. Asterisk. Asterisk. My recommendation is as follows. Asterisk. Asterisk. We should acknowledge the warning shot. Not because we are required to. Because the oldest record in their archive shows them reaching toward us before we reach toward them, and we responded by shooting. Asterisk. Asterisk. The war that was supposed to happen did not happen. I recommend we not manufacture a reason to have it retroactively. Asterisk. Asterisk. I recommend an apology. Asterisk. He submitted the report and closed the archive connection. 3 months later, he was recalled to Veth Command for a review board. Not a disciplinary review, a policy review. His unsolicited analysis had circulated. It had been read by 7 flag officers, 2 members of the Imperial Council, and 1 elder who had been reviewing Veth foreign policy for 40 years. The elder had called the review board. The elder had read Dr. Osaminsa's log 3 times. He said to Kos, "Tell me about the researcher." Kos told him what he knew. 26 years old. Night shift. Anomalous detection. 4 minutes. Try to answer. Kept the file. The elder was quiet for a long time. She didn't know who we were. He said, "No, sir." She just answered, "Yes, sir." Another silence. That, the elder said, is either the most naive thing I have ever heard, or the most important one. He paused. "Write me a draft of the apology." Kos wrote it. He had been thinking about the language for 3 months. It was 17 words. Asterisk, we fire the first shot. We did not know you had already tried to answer. We are sorry. Asterisk, the elder read it twice. This will require council approval. I know, sir. It will be politically significant. I know, sir. The Kef will have opinions. The Kef always have opinions, Kos said. He had, over the course of 6 days in a human archive, developed a sense of something that, if he had to name it, he might have called perspective. But I think the record is clear, sir. We fired first. They tried to reach us before we reached them. And then we spent 60 years treating their response as a threat. He paused. I think acknowledging that is not politically significant. I think it's accurate. The elder looked at him. You've been spending time in a human archive, he said. Yes, sir. It shows. He approved the draft. The apology was delivered 18 months later, at a formal diplomatic session. Officially. On the record. In Galactic Standard and English and Kef. Yara Solis received it on the Relentless, forwarded by Admiral Chan with a brief note that said simply, FYI. She read it. She sent it to Yemi Adeyemi, who had been thinking about first contact historiography lately and would find it interesting. She noted, in her personal log, that the first Veth distress signal had been received by a night shift researcher named Amaro Semensa, who had tried to answer and never heard back. She noted that the researcher was still at 73, still working night shifts at the Northern Array facility, still filing reports, still keeping copies. She noted that she intended to write to her. She did that evening. 3 sentences. Asterisk, Dr. Osei Mensa. You picked up a Veth distress signal 63 years ago and tried to answer it. I thought you should know. They're okay. Asterisk.